Hi there, welcome back. So I want to film my Oracle deck collection video. I'm pretty proud of the collection that I curated over the years, and I want to just showcase what I find important and useful and fun for me. And I'm probably also going to be decluttering a few Oracle decks, so my already sort of small collection will get even smaller. So let's get to it. The first category of decks I want to show is the decks with prompts or keywords. The first decks that I want to showcase, if you've seen my channel enough, you'll know it's probably the Spread Machine cards, or as it's now called, the Spread Crafters Oracle. And I also have the two expansions that came with it, the Change and the Quest expansions. So why I will always mention this Oracle deck first is because it literally scratches all the itches that I have when it comes to an Oracle deck. What I like in Oracle decks, I prefer Oracle decks to have a specific kind of structure or use that makes them more useful and different from tarot to me. I don't really use a lot of Oracle decks that just have keywords because I feel like if I wanted to just read cards with keywords or key concepts, I would just pick up a tarot deck for that. So the fact that these cards have the keywords, but they also have actual prompts that I can read about that help me jog my memory onto how to read this, that really helps. Having these focus areas, beautiful, love it. Having different categories, beautiful, love it. I recently gushed about this in one of my my Valentine's tarot videos, so here I am again, literally talking about it. I think I've convinced a couple of my friends to also get this deck. This is just a beautiful, wonderful deck for creating spreads. I usually like to create my own spreads rather than always find some off the internet. Although nowadays I have been trying to find more off the internet because I have gotten a little bit lazy with creating my own spreads. But nonetheless, I think this is an easy deck to use, a fun deck to use, honestly. And I love the reminders that there are always so many ways I can handle my situation. It's a very useful deck for when I feel stuck and maybe I want to think like, okay, what can I do? Maybe I can reframe something. Maybe something requires my solving. Maybe something requires me to purge it. There's so many different kinds of words and concepts that are illustrated through these decks. And I just think it is just so cool. Absolutely my favorite Oracle deck. And if I had to repurchase one, or if I could only have one, this would absolutely just be the single Oracle deck that I have. So that's the Spread Crafters Oracle. And I also want to mention the couple of expansions that I have. There's some stuff on there. Anyway, so the Change and the Quest expansions. Even though these are called expansions to the Spread Crafter series, they also are good enough to be standalone decks. Sorry, I'm not used to being in frame here. Okay, these are also standalone decks. So you don't have to have the base deck to be able to use these decks. But anyway, I'm not here to try to advertise you. I'm just here to show you why I love these decks. So these have a similar color scheme, or not similar color scheme, similar design to the Spread Crafters Oracle, in that, you know, you've got the basic background, you've got the keyword, and you've got the prompt here. So again, super useful prompts to jog my memory or jog my thinking. This Change deck is themed around social justice. This deck is also a very heavily shadow work deck because a lot of themes in here are things that we would not want to look at normally. Like we would not want to look at, we would not want to acknowledge how we our privilege maybe. I want to mention, I once used this deck to do a reading for how to improve my relationship with my mom. And the privilege card came up. And it was just such a, I don't want to use a violent idiom, analogy, metaphor. It was a slap in the face. It was a major call out, really. To consider how I might have privilege over my mom. And that might be hindering me being able to connect with her more or be able to have a better relationship with her. So it is definitely quite a shadow work type of deck. And I feel like because of that, that's why it doesn't get a lot of love on YouTube or otherwise. It's just very hard. How are you going to, do a reading for someone and tell them that they're prejudiced? I think that's a really, really hard message to deliver in a tactful and useful way. Oh yeah, we're in the real shadow work cards now. Oppression and alienation. So it's a really, really cool deck though. And I think if you're into social issues and social justice and or just shadow work and trying to be a better person, this is a difficult deck to use and work with, but I feel like the results are also worth it. So that is the Change expansion. And then we also have the Quest expansion here. And like I mentioned, this is also, you can also use this as a standalone deck. So you don't have to use this in conjunction with the main deck. So the Quest expansion is all themed around video game concepts. So similar to how in the main deck we had questions around the seeker, the querent, in this deck the questions are themed around the character instead. So you are the character in this story, you know, you are the hero. I was trying to figure out how to flip through these cards here. So this is a very, very nerdy deck, but it is adorable and it is so lovely and so cool. If you're into analogies, this is like a super cool deck for that, because it's interesting to think about, you know, instead of like, what is the gift that you might receive? What is the treasure that you're looking for? You know, what is the reason why you're doing this difficult quest? What is the reason why you're going through all this struggle? What is the treasure that you're going to gain from it? Side quests, you know, what's the side thing that you need to figure out or accomplish during this time? It's a really cool deck, and I am such a sucker for thematic decks like this. I really, really just love decks like this. This is such a cool deck, and I would love to find more ways to use this, not just in my own readings, but also on this channel as well. I know Varen Gretchel did a video featuring the Spread Machine Change expansion and did a sample reading with that. So maybe I'll do more sample readings cobbled together from these decks. Or yeah, I don't know. I just think they're really cool, and there's a lot of potential for creative uses for these decks. So yeah, those are my first favorite decks, the Spread Machine decks. The next deck is the Asian American Literary Review Tarot, or the AALR Tarot. This is called a tarot deck, but in actuality, I would use it more like an oracle deck, because it's not tarot adjacent in the slightest. There are some cards that do line up with tarot, like the Devil, but the meanings don't really correlate to tarot, and the numbers don't correlate to tarot at all. So I would use this more as a prompt, like oracle deck with keywords. So this deck was put together by a bunch of different authors. A bunch of people contributed to this deck. On the front is the image, and on the back is the description of the image and how it relates to Asian American studies, Asian American history, etc., etc. I think I mentioned this in my Valentine's Tarot tag video. I called this deck a dinner date deck because this deck has a lot of very deep concepts, sociologically speaking and individually speaking as well. I think a lot of people, well, I don't want to speak for other people, just for myself. I know that there are some times when I have had big existential thoughts. You know, what is the purpose of us being here? Not just as people, but especially as Asian Americans, you know? What is our role in the society? How did our history contribute to who we are as a group of people and who we are as individuals, you know? The stories of our past, even if I don't think they define or affect who I am today, they still do in some small way. So it's really interesting with this deck to consider just how people in the past, like, you know, just how people, our struggles, our ancestors' struggles in the past have led to where we are, but also, even if it doesn't affect me currently, it's just interesting to think about other people's experiences, even if I myself have not had those experiences. So it is a really cool deck. I haven't got the chance to really read this or study with it yet. I will say one of my complaints, and I did say this in the other video that I mentioned this in, one of my complaints about this deck is that a lot of the cards are meant to be read as positive, but also some cards are meant to be read as negative, and it's very hard to try to see the negative cards as neutral or find a positive spin on it. For example, the model minority is one example. The model minority is a myth or a stereotype that is kind of placed upon Asian Americans. It's like other minorities, other people of color should aspire to be the model that Asian Americans have, quote, put themselves on. For example, like studying, getting good grades, being super smart, being polite, being not a menace to society. The model minority is a harmful myth that is used to prop up Asians at the detriment of all other people of color in America. And it's a false it's a false myth to uphold because like Asian Americans, there are plenty of us who are not smart and who are not like polite all the time and who do not want to just be like a polite like contributor to society to uphold like whiteness. And also like there are people of other minorities that like also do that stuff, and it's just a screwed up like myth. If you get this in a reading, how do you turn this into a positive, right? I feel like in the moment when I draw this inner reading, I'd have to do some more brain exercise to turn this into a positive or into an advice card, whatever the reading calls for. But yeah, as it stands, this card alone, like it's hard to find a positive for it. And there's another card that I remember drawing that I couldn't find a positive for. The Desecrated Temple. The Desecrated Temple is kind of, it's the idea of a temple that has kind of been like desecrated. It's been pillaged of all of its information and it's been kind of soiled in a way. Temple implores us to enter our holy places, bodily, externally, otherwise, in spite of fear. When the temple appears in a reading, it reminds us to take a long, hard look at our demons, those we harbor and those we fight to survive, and to build homes exorcised of them. Honestly, I can't really tell if that's a positive or a negative thing. It's kind of a lot of words that I don't fully understand and I can't really conceptualize right now. So that is just my general complaints about the deck and why it's a bit hard for me to use. But I still think it's fascinating, and I'd still love to be at the point one day when I can understand and use this deck with ease. Another prompt-based deck is the Knitter's Oracle. This one, as you can guess by the name, is an oracle meant for knitters, or based off of the concepts of knitting. There's a little fold-out booklet here. There's a digital booklet that goes a lot more in depth with these cards, but this is a super adorable deck. I also mentioned this in another video, the Valentine's Tarot tag. All of these oracle decks are just coming out in that tag. As you can see, the colors, most of the cards are just pretty much one color. Pretty monochromatic, right? And I find this deck so fascinating because I've never thought to use crochet terms or knitting terms. Sorry, I know people hate getting knitting and crocheting mixed up. I do both. But anyway, I never would have thought to use these fiber art terms in a divinatory sense. But when this deck came out, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to get this. It is so ingenious. I pretty much understand all these concepts as is, but finding a divinatory aspect of them, it takes me a little bit of time to think of something. So one thing I want to do is I want to basically create my own guidebook from here. So instead of this one lists just keywords for each card, which is great. The way that I want to do it is I want to eventually deep dive with this deck and read from the guidebook and really ponder each card and create my own set of meanings for each card. That way, that experience will have imprinted itself in my mind. I meant to say like I'll have studied it enough that it like makes sense in my mind, kind of like you study for a test. But yeah, hopefully once I've done that, then I will have studied the meanings and I will have understood it better, and I can pull the meanings more easily when I do a reading. Because right now, when I try to do a reading with these cards, I tend to just draw a blank. Like, I know what the bind off is. It's like finishing something. The knitter, it's myself, the moth, something that's undesirable, I guess. But, to draw a cohesive message from it, I'm not there yet. But still, it's a very fun deck, and I think it's adorable. So that is the Knitter's Oracle. Another prompt-based deck is the Prairie Majesty Oracle. I was lucky enough to get the independent edition when it first funded on Kickstarter. It is now mass market through Hay House, I believe. Look at this guidebook, by the way. It is really pretty. I love that the edges have been color-coded in this way. And I love that the text is it's big and it's very readable as well. Super helpful. Thank you, creators. And I love this deck as well because it's very similar to the Spread Machine Oracle, the first one I showed. It's very similar, but also not quite the same. I think it's always similar in structure, but a lot of it is also completely not similar. So we've got, the keyword here, we've got the prompt, and we've got the drawing of what the thing is that's related to this keyword. So I find this useful and fun. Do I use it a lot? Okay, I find this useful, but do I actually use it a lot? I don't really know. I can't say. Because the cards are so big, I can only use them as like single card draws instead of like full-on spreads. Sorry, again, not used to being in frame here. Okay. I really like the vibrant colors. I think it's so cool that this art has been layered on top of like these photos as well. It's just a really interesting mixed medium there, I guess. And it's just interesting. It's a very interesting deck visually. I have considered rehoming this because I'm not much into nature decks, but I still have it because I think it's just very fascinating. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about this. It's adorable. It's visually very cool, very pretty to look at. I love the bold lines. The bold line art is so cool to look at. This is one of my only like nature decks, and I think I don't want to let it go because it's one of my only nature decks, and I'm like, I need at least 1 or 2 nature decks to convince me that I'm somewhat of a nature person. But yeah, that is the Prairie Majesty Oracle. I really do love decks that have the prompt, the keyword, but then also like prompts like this. Like it helps a lot because again, because Oracle decks don't have structure like Tarot does, I can't study them the same way that I would Tarot. I can't study like a Dixisal or a Prairie King Snake the way that I would study a Tarot deck. So these questions help me a lot. So yeah, Prairie Majesty Oracle. And the last deck I'll show in this category is the Reclaim Oracle. I sigh because this is such a dream come true kind of deck for me. I know a lot of people don't really understand this deck. I mean, you can say that about any deck, really. I know some people are really into this, and some people really don't get it. For people who really don't get it, of course, you're free to not like it. But I will try to explain why I really, really love this deck. First, if you've never heard of it, it's got all these abstract-looking beings here with different keywords, and these keywords are all based off of different emotions, I guess. Different feelings. This deck connects me to the human experience, the raw experiences of just being human. I have been someone who has struggled with perfectionism and really high standards for a long time, for pretty much my entire life. I was an overachiever, a perfectionist. I was a people pleaser. I basically ignored a lot of my own emotions and my own needs so that I could be more palatable, easier for other people to understand and accept and have around. It was easier for me to disconnect from my own emotions because that meant I would just be an easy person to take care of and people wouldn't think I was difficult. I wanted to be a robot so much of my childhood because the pain of feeling emotions was so real. And the pain of not having anyone to help me understand my emotions and help me guide through them and help me know that these emotions are valid and normal and human and they're bearable. I didn't have anyone to help me through so much of these emotions. And when I started going to life coaching, 3 or 4 some years ago now, I had to start opening up and reconnecting with these emotions. We did emotions worksheets. We talked about our emotions. My life coach helped me put words to the things I was feeling. And that was such a powerful opening experience for me. It was super powerful because, again, I'm learning these words and I'm learning to understand what's going on in my body when I react to things. I'm learning what happens when I speak a lot of my needs. I'm learning what I can do when I am actually connected with myself. And so that was such a powerful experience. And this deck is like my life coaching, my self-acceptance deck, my human experience deck. Because when I learn to have more compassion for myself, it helps me learn and remember to have compassion for other people and other humans as well. Behind everyone that I'm not used to seeing as human, they're experiencing all these human emotions as well. I feel like when you people please, you kind of see other people as means to an end, or you see other people as better than you. I mean, speaking from my own experience. But yeah, this deck just reminds me of all the variety of humans that we have, variety of emotions that we have as humans. I heard what I said. Yeah, the variety of emotions and experiences that we have as humans. And it also reminds me that these things are present in me because I'm human too, and that's okay. And these things are all okay and they're normal and they're bearable, because when I go through emotions that are unbearable, like injustice or boredom, I see that there's other cards in the deck, that these are other things that I can feel, that these are other things that I can tap into and remember, whether I choose to tap into them or whether I choose to just wait by my time until these feelings come back to me. So that is why I really love this deck. It feels so good to be connected to myself, and I want to keep trying to connect with myself and remembering what feelings feel like, because I never want to be in a place where I have to shut off my feelings and disconnect so harshly from myself as I did my entire teenage and young adult life. So that is the Reclaim Oracle. What a beautiful name. It's like you're reclaiming yourself. The next category I want to show is the message cards or affirmation card decks. The first deck I want to show is the Believe in Your Own Magic Oracle deck. This is a special deck to me because it is the first Oracle deck that I've ever gotten. I received this in a card exchange a couple years ago from an online tarot group. And instead of sending like a holiday card, they sent this instead, which I'm not mad about. So it's my first Oracle deck. As you can see, the cards are very big. They're bigger. They're as big as my hand. So shuffling is a whole thing. It's hard to overhand shuffle. But even though I honestly don't use this deck anymore, and I don't think I would repurchase this deck if I lost it, I still am very happy to have this deck. It's just sentimental to me because it was my first Oracle deck and I was very enamored by it at the time. I think the art is very wonderful. It's clearly very modern. It's got really nice colors. There's a certain softness to it that is also really nice. It definitely skews very young. There's a little bit of diversity here. Someone with a prosthetic leg here. I like that there's a keyword and there is a little phrase here as well. It helps me build associations with these different things, because if you were to ask me what does a lighthouse mean, I honestly would not care to think enough to tell you. I'm a bit lazy that way. I like things being a little bit handed to me. So sometimes the keywords don't always match up with the prompt, like feather. Think first before you judge. I'm not, off the top of my head, I'm not sure how that relates. But anyway, this is what I would also consider as kind of a witchy deck, because I don't consider myself super witchy or magic. I would like to be, but right now those concepts are not things that I identify very strongly with. But this deck, somehow the way that it's framed, the way that people are drawn, the things that they're wearing probably, it gives me witchy and magic vibes. I mean that's why the deck's called Believe in Your Own Magic, right? But yeah, it's a cute deck, and I'm very happy to have this, even though I don't use it. My first Oracle deck, it's very precious to me. So yeah. I would also recommend, if you have this, like put a post-it or something to help you get the guidebook out better, because the guidebook fits into the box like perfectly, and it's kind of a pain to get out if you don't have something to help pull it. Another affirmation card deck is the Inner Child Oracle. This is from the Etsy shop 7 Realm Signs. I don't know if they're still selling this because I don't see it on their website, but honestly, I might be selling this copy though. But anyway, so this one, oh, as you can see, the cards are very slippery. This one, I remember very clearly. I saw Roseology doing this, using this deck in her tarot readings. She is one of the first pick-a-card readers that I found and I follow because I love how soothing her voice is. I definitely follow pick-a-card readings for the aesthetics or for the vibes rather than for accuracy, because I'm more of a secular tarot reader. But this deck also, it kind of falls a little bit into the woo side for me, at least the art wise. Like the art is definitely not something that it's not my first choice of art. It's not like what I don't know, not identify with, just not something that I feel like I usually would pick. There we go. Sometimes things on camera are very alluring, is what I mean to say. So this deck was very alluring because Roseology has a very beautiful setup, and seeing this in front of the bright lights, I was like, oh my gosh, I really want to try this. I've drawn a few cards from this, but honestly, I think I'm ready to let this go because I just don't do inner child work much. To be honest, I really don't remember much from my inner child at all. I remember my inner teen more, my teenager years a lot more. These are wonderful, like self-care type of cards though. For example, like write a letter, this helps you, like gives you a prompt on why you should write down some things. I like it in theory, but in actuality, I just don't use it. So I think I'm ready to let this one go. So I might be putting it up for sale on a Facebook group soon, or giving it away to a good friend. So that is the Inner Child Oracle. But again, beautiful deck. All these decks are beautiful. I just don't use it. Another deck with messages is the Love and Magic Oracle deck by Adrienne Vita. This is also a deck I got on Etsy, like the Inner Child Oracle. And this was my favorite Oracle deck for a long time. I haven't used it recently, honestly, since I put all my Oracle decks away in a box. Like, I haven't used any of them, obviously. But I remember looking at just a few messages from the previews, and I remember feeling a sense of wonder. I felt like, wow, somehow these messages, even though they're so short, they're so poignant. They feel like they're exactly what I need to hear. This is the kind of like little nuggets of wisdom that I really appreciate. I feel, for example, knowing what you don't want helps you find out what you do want. Spend more time focusing on what you want and watch your belief grow and desires come. This is a very helpful card for when I feel like, I feel like I'm surrounded by things that I don't want. Or I keep experiencing things, or like, doing things that I don't want. It just helps get me closer to finding out what I do want. They're just really wonderful little nuggets. This is a deck that, even though I'm flipping through it now, like I'm not really reading these texts, I have not flipped through or looked at all of these cards before, because I like to be surprised with whatever ones come up. And every time a card comes up in a reading, it always feels like that is exactly the card or the advice that I need to hear in that moment. It's incredible. I really, really love this deck, and I hope everyone gets to use it. And I feel like the people that I've read for, they've also said the same thing. Like, wow, that little nugget, that little sentence is like actually perfect. So that is the Love and Magic Oracle deck. The next prompt or keyword deck is the Ingredients of Trust deck. So this one is not marketed as an Oracle deck, so you probably won't find this in many like tarot or Oracle circles or occult circles. This deck is found on the Ingredients of Trust website. This deck is basically a lot of food ingredients. It's got other cards, but honestly, I don't really use these other cards. I'm just here to tell you about the very, very cute ingredient cards. So let's see, the title of this box says Unique Personality Discovery Cards. So every card, as you can see, we've got the art, we've got the whatever food it is, we've got a little blurb. The tomato says, you accept what happens, good or bad, and don't harbor ill feelings. Everyone is trying their best. Strength for giving. And a little slogan or a little pun here is, stop throwing me, because people throw tomatoes at a comedy show or whatever. So I think these puns are super, super cute. This deck is also by another Asian American, by the way. She's living, the deck, what is it? She's in LA and she's also Asian. So woohoo, props to her. But it is an adorable deck, and I love to use these as signifiers for pick a card readings. I love to use these as like a little affirmation at the end. Yeah, it's a cute deck, and I would love to find more uses for this deck. I'm sure I'll be able to come up with them, but for now, I have this on hand, and I love it. So that is the Ingredients of Trust deck. Oh yes, here's the backs. Again, not an Oracle deck or a Tarot deck, so the backs aren't meant to be reversible, but I don't know many people who shuffle reversals into their Oracle decks anyway. Another deck I want to show is the Open Spaces deck, Desert Collection. It says Desert Collection, but I don't know how many other decks are in this series. I don't know how many this person plans to create. All right, so this deck is also not marketed in the Tarot and Oracle world, so I'll probably put their website on screen right now and or in the description, probably both. But this deck, as you can see, it's a square deck, and the cardstock is pretty slippery. I found out about this deck because one of my good friends is a therapist, and she loves sharing therapist stuff, and she loves following therapists and sharing therapy stuff. And she saw this deck being advertised by the creator on Instagram. She showed it to me, and after a little bit of debating, I decided to get it. So this deck has 3 types of cards. We've got this Today Feels Like a Great Day, we've got A Whole Love Language, and we've got Me to Me. So what I will say about this deck is I feel like if you are really into therapy or therapy concepts and or unlearning societal beliefs concepts, this is the deck for you. If you're not into any of those, I feel like this deck might be a bit too deep or a bit like just undesirable or unreadable, I want to say. I don't know if the concepts will hit right with you if you're not into like therapy and unlearning beliefs. This deck is all about unlearning beliefs, and these cards, these words, they take a few rereads to sit with and understand, conceptualize how this might make sense. So I mentioned therapy concepts, like therapy and psychological concepts, because I feel like sometimes when we read like therapy words on the internet, they can feel very shallow. Sometimes concepts and unlearning things, they take a lot of time to sink in and a lot of mental effort to try to process them so that they make sense to us. I'm so sorry. I realize I've been flipping through this very, very fast, and I don't know if you've been able to pause to read the words, but I mean, it's just to show you how it looks, right? But anyway, this deck is a big brain kind of deck. So I think that's the last thing I'll say about that. But it is a cool deck, and I know that when my therapist friend came over, she loves looking at this deck. She thinks it's super fascinating, and sometimes the one card pulls are very, very insightful. For example, A Whole Love Language. I've never experienced what you are sharing. Are you cool with me just listening while you tell me about it? So I'd find this card relevant for those times when I feel uncomfortable about when I don't know what to say. This is a reminder to myself that it's okay to just say out loud, I've never experienced this. Can I just listen while you talk about it? Maybe I don't need to give advice. Maybe I don't need to ask a lot of questions. Right now I just need to listen. So, really interesting deck. The Open Spaces deck. Another deck I want to share is the Raincoast Dreams Oracle. Alright. This deck is very colorful and very abstract. What was initially appealing to me about this deck was that they have a little phrase or affirmation or message on the bottom. There was one message in particular that convinced me to get the deck because it was just so profound to me. It was meditate on the nature of impermanence. And I just thought that one sentence was so profound. I was like, okay, I gotta get this deck. I gotta see what the rest of the words are like. The words are cool. The art is interesting. I do struggle a little bit with this deck because the art does not always line up with what the words say. Sometimes it doesn't feel like they're really related at all. To free yourself, widen your circle of compassion. I'm not really sure what that means in relation to this. And sometimes I also don't know what this means. I think if I had to meditate on this a little bit more, I might find some meaning and concepts for this. But yeah, this is the Raincoast Dreams Oracle. I don't really have too much to say about this. I am considering rehoming this, unfortunately. But also the colors, the cool colors, the awesome looking colors and the drawings make me still want to keep it. If not just for an art piece. I think this Oracle deck is available without the text as well, available only as these cards, the art on these cards, which is really interesting. But yeah, I really don't know. Oh, I wish I used this deck more. It's really cool to look at visually, but I also just don't know what to make of this art. Maybe it's just meant to be fun to look at, honestly. And I guess it's okay to have decks like that, right? Decks that are just fun to look at. They don't serve a real deep spiritual purpose. So that is the Raincoast Dreams Oracle. Another deck I've got is the Deck of Care, 52 self-care activities in a deck of playing cards. So as the title or the tagline says, it is playing cards. So rather than a tarot deck or a deck without structure, it does have a little bit of structure. They actually follow some sort of the tarot structure. So the numbers do have numerological associations here. The jacks, queens, kings line up with the page, knights, and queens and kings. The suits also correlate with the suits of tarot. So logical thinking, spades is swords, clubs is wands, hearts is cups, and diamonds is pentacles. So what's really interesting or cool about this deck is that each card has a self-care activity on it. Let's see. Queen of Cups. If this is someone you consider family, that definitely feels like Queen of Cups vibes. So, very cute deck, very easy to read and look at. Very easy, obvious use. Honestly, just draw this as a single self-care activity for the day, for the week, for the month. It's a very simple, straightforward deck. So, I would give this deck to more people that I knew are into self-care. So, I'm going to figure out which of my friends like self-care, and I'm going to give them a copy of this deck because it is very cool. Ace of Pentacles. Reflect on what your goals are professionally and financially. That is pretty good self-care. I think this deck is also useful for people who are studying tarot because by associating these cards with the tarot association, I feel like it gives you an idea of how this relates to the tarot, like Eight of Cups. Exercise balance, balance, staying versus leaving. That's what I would associate with the Eight of Cups. Not that that is super deep or profound, but anyway, that is the Deck of Care. And another affirmation deck I've got is what I call the Marylou Affirmation deck. And I call it the Marylou Affirmation deck because this was created by Marylou Falstreau. There we go, Falstreau. I'll put her information on the screen or in the description box as well. This is another deck that is not marketed in the tarot and oracle world. This is the, Women and the Hourglass series that Marylou has created. On the front you have the message in English, and on the back you have the message in Spanish and also in French. So this is another affirmation deck that I also find really, really useful and really light, yet also very profound. This is a card deck that my life coach showed me during our first sessions when I used to go in person. We would basically draw a card at the end of each session, and it was really great to kind of conceptualize, like, for example, imagine this, right? I've just finished a session and I've been crying, I've been processing these like deep truths and stuff, and I draw a card and it tells me one day she woke up and decided to be brave. And it just feels like, it can be that simple. It can just be that simple. One day she woke up and decided she was beautiful. So, as a deck is called Women and the Hourglass, clearly this deck is more women-oriented. But I don't mind this deck. I don't resonate with a lot of divine feminine or like super feminine decks or decks that market themselves as being for feminine people because I don't consider myself very feminine. I hardly call myself a woman, honestly, even though I am, legally an adult and I am female. But for this one, I love that these concepts, they're just more about self-love. And they are about womanhood, but they're not so much about like, I don't know, a specific kind of womanhood that I don't resonate with. I don't really know what else to say about that. But anyway, it's a wonderful deck. And we don't draw cards anymore because our life coach sessions are online, through the phone now. But I decided I wanted to get my own deck and keep drawing cards and keep, just giving myself these little reminders. So that is what I call the Marylou Affirmation deck. Although it's actually called the Women and the Hourglass series. But yeah. And the most recent affirmation deck or message deck to come to my collection is the Essential Oil Oracle cards. I was just gifted this by a good friend over this past Christmas, this past holiday season. And very shiny gilding here. It's a little bit hard to shuffle, but hopefully after I shuffle it more, it'll break in some more. So what's cool about this deck is that we've got the essential oil, which personally I honestly don't really care for. I'm never going to remember these like associations, and I don't care for the essential oils, to be honest. But what I am here for is the trigger statement and a true statement, and the little like prompt or explanation as well, which is always appreciated. There's also actually a little keyword up here too. Why this deck really hits a note with me, why I resonate with this deck, is because basically in some of my first sessions, my life coach and I did CBT worksheets, cognitive behavioral therapy worksheets, specifically one about rewriting and rewiring automatic thoughts. How it works is there are thoughts that jump to mind immediately, and those thoughts that are automatic thoughts, our first impressions, our first, the thoughts that are automatic, those are thoughts that were ingrained into us, that were taught to us by society, by our parents, by our peers. So with the CBT worksheets that I did, we had to learn to rewrite those thoughts, reframe those thoughts into something that is wiser or more helpful or more accurate. So for example, an automatic thought might be, oh my God, why is she wearing that? That looks so ugly. And the new thought that I might write in might be something like, whoa, that's interesting. I've never seen that before. That's cool that she wanted to wear that. Or another new thought might be, I wonder if she knows how that looks. This is a good friend. Like, I will ask her what she thinks of her outfit. Things like that. And so that's why this deck really hits home with me, because we've got the trigger statement on the top here, which is like an automatic thought, or a thought that we might think when we're triggered and we're not thinking super clearly, when we're not even thinking, we're just feeling. Then we have the true statement, which is kind of like the new thought to me. So it's an interesting deck that reminds me of the CBT worksheets that I did. And yeah, I'd like to keep using this more as, an affirmation deck, a message card deck. Yep, don't have much else to say about that. That is the Essential Oils Oracle deck. The last category I want to show is my study decks. These are decks that I would like to study, that have certain concepts or systems that I just want to study. The first deck that I want to talk about, I don't have because it's currently on loan to a friend. This is the Cosma Visions Oracle. I basically wanted to study this deck because I just thought the concept of past lives was super interesting. I started reading the book for it and learning more about it this past year. Although I have to say I'm a bit disappointed in the minor arcana. But since I don't have it now, I don't want to talk too much about it. I hope to make another video detailing my thoughts on why I'm a little bit annoyed with this deck. But yeah, that's the first deck that I want to talk about, at least the Cosma Visions Oracle. Another deck that I also want to mention that I also don't have right now because it's also on loan to a friend is the Empress deck. The full name is the Adventurer's Tarot Empress deck, but it is not a tarot deck at all in the slightest. There is no tarot structure to it. It's more of a deck meant for D&D. It's basically a deck of cards with different positions or different classes or people on it. There is no major arcana or minor arcana. I also plan to study this deck in the future and really make my own guidebook for it because I've never had like a fantasy deck or really much interest in fantasy or D&D before. I mean, I still won't play D&D, but I'd like to study this deck and kind of figure out my own divinatory meanings for these cards. So that is the Empress deck. Now, a deck that I can show is the Archetypes cards from Caroline Miss. I have not read with this deck ever since I got it, but I have this deck still in the hopes that one day I will read with it. So I was influenced by Lexi of Light Ones Tarot. She used to do pick a card readings and she would show this deck quite often, and I thought it was super cool. So this deck has the archetype on the top. It's got light attributes and shadow attributes. It's like, what are skills that are helpful and what are skills that are detrimental? And it's not super fan of that card, but anyway, there was a point in time in like my middle school years that I thought I would be a writer, and I think this deck kind of speaks to that like wannabe writer in me. Oops. But in reality, I really don't use these cards enough, and I don't know what to use them for. I could use them for like pick a card readings, but I feel like that's such a niche, like a niche use for them. I want to find other ways to actually use them. So I'm holding on to this deck in the hopes that one day I will be able to find a way to use them that like makes sense for me and the way that I read. But right now, it's just sitting here begging to be studied, begging to be read with. Or maybe it's not. Maybe it's just sitting here. That's probably it. It's just sitting here. But yeah, it's a cool deck though, right? If you're into writing, this might be a really cool deck for you. Yeah, sorry again. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm not used to being in frame. Oh my lordy. All right. That is the Archetypes Tarot. Archetypes cards. Whoa. Archetypes cards. Another study deck is the Moonology Oracle. I remember this was the first deck that I bought from a shop in person. We were at a meetup with other tarot friends, other Asian American tarot friends in the area, and I saw this deck in person and I was like, hey, I'm curious about it. I'd like to buy it. I marked the sections of the guidebook according to like the new moon and the full moon. That way I could flip to them a bit easier. So I got this deck in the hopes that it would help me study Moonology. But honestly, the most that I do with Moonology is I just look at the calendar for the year and I mark down when the new moon and full moon is, and then I just tell myself I'm going to follow those phases, and then I don't. It's just too much of a practice that I just don't think I will ever integrate into my actual practice. These cards are basically based off of the moon. This has like a sister deck, a sequel deck, the Moonology Manifestations. I already have this deck, so these cards feature different phases of the moon, and a little phrase for it and a little keyword. But it's just not clicking with me. It does not mean as much to me as I thought it would, and I think at this point I'm just ready to let it go. I got this deck because I was hoping to be able to draw like a card, and for example, when there was a new moon in Taurus, I hope to just take this card, put it on the stand, and like, I don't know, read the guidebook and look at it and whatever, but again, I just don't use it. Full moon in Libra. I think these little concepts are cool, like new moon and Pisces, combine them, and what message would that give you? But I don't do this enough. So yeah, I'm ready to let this go. But it's a cool deck. Just not really what I need or what I'm looking for. I don't think I'm ever going to get more serious about astrology than I am now. So even getting this astrology deck was just not my thing. So yep, that is the Moonology cards. Goodbye. Goodbye. Another study deck I've got is the Mystic Sisters Oracle. This one is definitely not something that I would pick up myself, but this was gifted to a friend, especially one who has gotten a few readings from me, especially at the beginning. This one is probably the most like mystical deck that I have, because it's, let me try to flip this way, I think that'll be easier. Let's see. Yeah, this one is the most like mystical deck that I have, because it's just not what I usually go for. But she's gifted it to me, and I want to make an effort to try it out. For a brief time, when I first got this deck, I did try to pull a card a day or a card per journaling session and read the guidebook and journal about it, but it wasn't quite clicking with me as much as I thought it would. But that was at the beginning, when I was still first getting into tarot and oracle. That was like my first year, really. Now we're like 2-3 years later. I don't know if I might find a different value in this. I'm not going to rehome it yet though, because it was a gift, and also I still want to give this a try. And it's just unlike any of my other decks. I don't have many goddess or deity themed decks. I never really plan on doing goddess or deity work, but I think it's still interesting in a way that I'm still curious about it enough to keep it around. So that is the Mystic Sisters Oracle. I should have given a warning for nudity. Did you know there's nudity in there? You've been warned after the fact. Another goddess-themed deck is the Legendary Ladies Goddess deck. I was going to say Oracle, but the actual title is a Legendary Ladies Goddess deck. So this one I got from a witchy swap meet in my area. I went with a friend, and there was someone who brought a bunch of their Oracle decks. It was very, very fascinating to flip through all of them. My little gremlin hands were feeling very satisfied. So this deck, similar to the other one, features different goddesses. So there's a keyword associated with each goddess, with each lady here, which is helpful. A part of me wants to rehome this deck though, because like I mentioned, I'm just not really into goddess or deity work. But another part of me wants to keep this deck because it's so pretty to look at. You know, it's pretty to look at, but I don't think I will ever actually use this for readings, and I don't see myself really studying this or getting to remember it very much. So I don't know. I think I'll keep trying it out for a little bit more so I can just remember the images and experience the images, because the art is really pretty. But, you know, thematically speaking, it's just not really my thing. But it's still a lovely deck, right? So that is the Legendary Ladies Goddess deck. So another deck that I want to mention is the Perspective Glass Oracle. This is a deck from the Philippines, and I got this deck because I was buying a tarot deck from someone who lives in the Philippines. So this is by a Filipino creator, Tets Agustin. This deck is sort of themed around the Enneagrams, which is the type 1 through type 9. And I know a little bit about my Enneagrams. I am a type 9, wing 1, I want to say. But I've also had traits of like type 3 and type 6. Anyway, it's technically themed around the Enneagrams. Upon reading the guidebook, I'm not too knowledgeable about like what the how to use it in accordance with the Enneagrams. But I will say a lot of the cards have this like, they have an upright and they have like what seems like a reverse, although sometimes the reverse like does not always correlate with the upright. And I also think sometimes it just doesn't seem that helpful. But I think that's just my very, very first impressions from like not reading the deck itself. Like, for example, this one says begin advocating for yourself. And then this one says create space for you. I feel like those are basically the same thing. I don't think they're different enough to warrant being like on opposite sides of the card. I think this deck is interesting now, the more that I look at it. I just don't quite understand the system here, what these numbers are. But, you know, I decided to get this deck and try it out. And I think it'll be an interesting experience, is the least I can say. So that is the Perspective Glass Oracle. One interesting deck, right? And the last couple decks that I have to show are not strictly tarot or oracle. They are playing cards. Yeah, I don't even use these for tarot and oracle. I might though one day, but I just really wanted to show them. Okay, this is how the Sailor Moon deck opens. It opens via a box sliding out like this, or like a tray sliding out. So this is by the artist Shinoyume. And I honestly got the cloud card because they said they were going out of stock, and yeah, don't get stuff when they're going out of stock. You don't know if you're going to actually use it. Like how adorable these illustrations are. They're so cute. They're so chibi. Some of them don't have noses, which is a little strange. Maybe it's just Helios. I don't know. I like that the cards actually they actually name the name of the character, because I have another Sailor Moon tarot deck, and that one does not name the characters in the guidebook, which is very annoying to me. So I love that the characters are actually named. It helps you remember who they are. All of the inner scouts are on the queens, I want to say, and I think all of the outer scouts are on the jacks. I could be wrong. I haven't opened this deck in a really long time. But anyway, I love this art, and I hope one day I can create divinatory meanings for each of these that I can actually use them in readings. I think that would be really fun. But for now, I'm just enjoying the art. It is so cute. It's so colorful. I really love colorful art like this. And I love that there are details on the frame and on the border, but the center character still stands out. Because I think this strikes a nice balance of like flowery and extra and simple and I guess easy to read. It's like a good balance between that for me. So yeah, that's my little Sailor Moon playing card deck. And then the other playing card deck I got also from Shinoyume is the Cloud card playing cards. So I have never seen Cardcaptor Sakura until these past couple of years. Basically, I started watching it this past couple of years to finally get into it because I was like, it's been super long since I've seen Sailor Moon and I want to watch another magical girl anime. And I think Sakura is like the next most popular one and I really want to see what it's about. So I finally started watching it. I'm only about halfway through the season or through the show. But it's cute, it's light, it's very easy to watch. So now I can say I finally understand a little bit about what these cards are, and that's all I got to say about that. I know that there's actual Cloud card decks. I don't know if I'll actually get one, but I like Shinoyume's art style, so I think if I can just get more used to this one will be the only Cloud card deck I really need. So yeah, that is the Shinoyume Cloud card playing card deck. I come with an update. I have decided to declutter these decks. So these two were already on the chopping block. This one, I know I said this was my first Oracle deck, but I just don't see myself using it ever again, really. I might have kept this around to do readings with for a certain group of people, but I just don't think that's a good enough reason to keep an Oracle deck, so goodbye. This one, I'm just not clicking with it enough to want to keep exploring it, to be honest. Kind of same with this one. I feel like if I really want to study this, I will buy it in the future. It's not that expensive. Someone else could probably use this more than I. And this one, I just like my spread machine Oracle a lot more. And I think while this is here taking away attention from that, I think the spread machine just does that job better. So I know someone will really enjoy this. So goodbye, decks. And that was my Oracle deck collection. Thank you so much for watching and sticking with me through this whole video. That is all I got for you today. I hope to see you in another video. Bye!